Welcome to my channel. This is JC Rock and Metal Reviews. My name is John, and I have a new album review. It's by the punk rock band The Offspring. The name of the album is called Let the Bad Times Roll. So before I begin, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. I do rock and metal reviews, rankings, and more. So The Offspring is an American rock band. They're from California. They formed in 1984, and basically the two members who have been consistent throughout all these years are Brian Dexter Holland and Kevin Noodles Wasserman. So they released their debut album in 1989. They followed that up in 1992 with Ignition, but it wasn't until 1994 when they released an album, and it was aptly titled, called Smash, and that's what it was. It really did very well. It brought them into the mainstream, and it was a time in the mid-90s when there was this resurgence of punk rock along with Green Day and Rancid. But this album did have a lot of hits. For example, Come Out and Play and Self-Esteem. After that, they released another album in 1997 called Ixnay on the Hombre, and this album was a little darker, and it didn't really do that well in sales, but they had like one hit off it called Gone Away, and I'm going to be talking about that a little later on. After that, they released an album called Americana, and that one actually did very well, and it might even be their best-selling album. And also, this is also my personal favorite. You know, I really like that album the best out of all of them. But since then, they released 5 more albums, and I'm not going to talk about those because I haven't really listened to them. But I do remember back in 2003, and they were released like a press release, and they said they were going to call the new album called Chinese Democracy, you snooze, you lose. And that was like during the time when Guns N' Roses was planning on releasing their album Chinese Democracy, but it took them, I don't know how long, 10 years or so. But as soon as Axl Rose heard that, he filed a cease and desist order. But in the end, it was just an April Fool's joke, so that's all that happened with that. But I thought that was funny. But the new album is called Let the Bad Times Roll, and it is their first album in 9 years. So basically their style is punk rock, but they have been called like other genres like melodic hardcore or pop punk. But for the purpose of this review, we could just call it punk rock. One thing that characterizes their songs is the use of like whoa and wah or yeah in their choruses. We're going to hear that like throughout their albums. And they also have a lot of like recurring themes. For example, they have a lot of riffs that are like inspired by Middle Eastern music, and you hear that on a song like Come Out and Play. They talk a lot about toxic relationships, such as She's Got Issues, Self-Esteem, and there's a song in this album called We Don't Have Sex Anymore. And they also talk about US politics, and their lyrics also tend to be very sarcastic. The album is called Let the Bad Times Roll. It's fairly short. It's about 33 minutes long. I'm going to talk about my 5 favorite songs, but some of the songs on this album are a little more pop-oriented. Some are more straightforward punk rock. And I think the stronger songs are more towards the second half of the album, so I'll be talking mostly about that. You know, they include an instrumental. They do a cover of one of their old songs. But I'm going to talk all about that right now. The first song I want to talk about is called Let the Bad Times Roll. And this is their first single. And they released it a little shortly before the album was released. And it probably wasn't the best choice of a first single because it did have more of a commercial sound. And it didn't really capture like their sound or their style. But I did like it. And I still do like it a lot. It sticks in your head. It's very upbeat. It's catchy. You hear some keyboards on it. I don't really hate the song, but it's just not very representative of the band. The next single they released was called We Never Have Sex Anymore. And this is one of those songs that follows their recurring theme of the toxic relationships. And this has more of like a ska punk sound, I guess you would call it that. I'm not a expert on punk rock, so if I say anything incorrect, you can correct me. But like I said, this is very reminiscent lyrically of the song Self-Esteem and She's Got Issues. And it's a little more commercial. It does have like a traditional Mexican music influence. So again, this song is just okay, but again, it's not very representative of the band. So the next songs I'm going to talk about are, I guess I call them like deep cuts. And these are the ones that I probably enjoyed the most. So they have an instrumental that's only 1 minute long called In the Hall of the Mountain King. And you've heard the song a million times. It's just a classical song, and it's been covered so many times. But I enjoy the song, I like it, and it really like fits well like as a rock song. Even though it's appeared on many other albums, I enjoyed that. Probably my favorite song is called The Opioid Diaries, and it's straightforward punk rock, and it's very representative of the Offspring sound. It goes at a fast pace, the drum beats are very fast, and what I like best about the song is that there's a breakdown at about 1.5 minutes. It has this like really like crunchy riff. Then the song like changes tempos, goes into another verse, and then it goes back to like the original verse. And I think they did a really good job of like doing the whole like transition throughout the song. The song talks about the subject of drug addiction. So this, again, like I said, probably my favorite of the album. Another song I like is called Hassan Chop. And this is where they talk about US politics, and more specifically, the topic of like the ongoing wars, in the US. And this one's faster. It's a little more of a hardcore punk rock sound. It's fairly short, about 2 minutes, 21 seconds. And this does have like their signature, like Middle Eastern inspired guitar solo, like, towards the middle of the song. And it's very short, but I like this one a lot. The next one I want to talk about is the song Gone Away. So the song from their album Ixnay, hombre. It was a very fast, upbeat, punk rock song. But lyrically, it was about missing, dealing with the loss of a loved one. So kind of like the rhythm of the original song and the lyrical context probably didn't really go well together. So fast forward many years later, and the band Five Finger Death Punch did a cover of it, but they did it in the form of like a very heartfelt ballad. So on this album, The Offspring did a cover of their original song, but in the style of Five Finger Death Punch, or they basically did their own song as a ballad. And I really think it works better this way, just because it fits the lyrics if the song is sung, this way as a ballad. And I probably like this version the best. The last song on the album is called Lullaby. It's 1 minute, 13 seconds. It's just a very quiet version of the title track. And the purpose is just to close out the album. So that's it. This is a fun album. It grows on you after a few times. It's a kind of album that you enjoy. It's not very representative of their 90s albums, but I think it's a good listen. I'm not really an expert on punk rock, but this is probably one of the few punk rock bands that I have listened to in the past. So just for the factor of enjoyability, I'm going to give this album an 8 out of 10. They're not really breaking any new ground. It's a little pop oriented in some parts, but it was a good album, and I liked it in general. Please comment below. Let me know what you thought of the album. Are you a fan? Have you listened to the other albums? How does this album stand out or stand up against the other ones? So tomorrow I have my review of the new Cannibal Corpse, and my next ranking will be the band UFO, and that is because of my contest winner showed 3 UFO albums in his entry, and part of my prize was to do a ranking of the band that the winner had chosen. So I will probably do the years like from 1970 to 1980. They have a really big discography, and I'm not the biggest fan of that band, So I'll probably do a smaller ranking, but that will be coming towards the end of the week. Please check out my in-video links, and I'll see you in the next one.